Lots of us try to do good with our time or with our money. We might donate money to charity, we might volunteer, or we might use our job to try to help others. Regardless of how we do good, there are just so many different ways that we can help others. The world's a big place and there's a lot of people that need help, and that can mean that the choice can feel pretty overwhelming. Still, that choice matters a lot. In this video, we'll talk about how choosing well can allow you to get much more bang for your buck. You might get 100 times more impact for the same amount of resources. So let's look at a specific example, which is education. Most of us understand the power of education, so imagine we were trying to find ways to improve it. What should we do to help? There are just so many options, it makes it hard to know what to focus on. When I've tried to make this decision in the past, when I've tried to help people get access to education, sometimes I've just ended up choosing the thing that was right in front of me, like donating some money to the children who needed school uniforms. I kind of felt that was okay because I thought all of the ideas sounded so important. I didn't think there'd be that much of a difference between how good each option was. It turns out that a lot of people think the way that I did. They think that the impact of different approaches probably differs, but only by a little bit. As a result, they don't look that closely at the numbers. For example, in 2 studies by Caviola and colleagues, the average person estimated that the best charitable program was about 1.5 times as good as the average one. If that was the case, and there were thousands of options to look at, then it would make sense to just pick the approach that emotionally appeals to us, like buying school uniforms for the kids that need them. The problem is that the best interventions to solve a problem don't differ by a factor of 1.5 or 2 or 3. Across most areas, the best social programs are dozens or even hundreds of times more effective than the average ones. They're not even close. If that's the case, then choosing a more effective intervention could allow us to do 10 times as much good with the same money or time. In this world, our choice matters a whole lot. Let's talk about examples across everything from global health to social problems to climate change. And in all of them, the best approaches are way better than the average ones. Let's start with our original example, improving education. In 2020, the World Bank looked at how good different educational interventions were for increasing learning. They all look pretty sensible. For example, we might provide uniforms to students who don't have them, provide preschool so students can start earlier, provide remedial education so students can catch up, or when students don't frequently attend school, we could pay parents when they do attend. It's easy to see how we might think that all of these are pretty good ideas. The facts were that they were far from equal. This graph plots these interventions in terms of how many extra years of learning they achieved for $100. First of all, over half of the 150 interventions the World Bank reviewed had basically no effects at all. That means picking a random intervention, there's a 50-50 chance we basically end up wasting our effort. Without thinking carefully, it's like a coin flip. Second, the best approaches were hundreds of times more effective than average. For example, 2 of the best interventions were grouping students into classrooms by ability level instead of age, and telling parents about the benefits of school. As you can see, these were much better than preschool or remedial education. The reason these interventions are so good is that in the places where they're needed, they're effective and they're extremely cheap. It costs so much less to tell parents about the benefits of school than it does to pay them every day their child attends. It costs so much less to group students on the basis of ability instead of age than it does to pay for additional teachers to come in and do remedial classes. As a result, for the same time and money, you can have hundreds of times more impact by choosing the right approach. This pattern holds across so many areas that it should really change the way we approach doing good. Whether we want to improve mental health, poverty, protect animals or the environment, there are some approaches that seem to have much more impact than others. This pattern was summarised really well by 80,000 Hours, a non-profit that has done 10 years of research alongside Oxford University academics. In each of these graphs, they ranked the interventions in terms of how effective they were. On the y-axis is the benefits that the intervention achieved per US dollar spent. Let's compare the ways of improving global health. As we can see, again, half of the interventions have almost no benefit. Then there are a bunch of interventions that are doing something. But over here, there's a handful of interventions that are way better than the rest. The best ones can add a year of healthy life for only a few dollars. There's a massive difference between the benefits of something like purchasing bed nets to prevent malaria than the average interventions down here, like giving people goats. This same pattern shows up in tackling social problems like substance abuse or criminal justice. As you can see from this graph, the best social policies are about 68 times more cost-effective than the average ones. The stuff at the top here, like programs to prevent smoking, work so much better than the average intervention. Like peer support groups design people to get their life back on track after developing substance abuse disorders. We can see the same thing in preventing climate change. The best climate change interventions are almost 20 times more effective than the average ones. It's so much more cost effective to, say, pass a law requiring ethanol in fuel than to buy back land from farmers who would otherwise use it for cattle. Now, I should say, just because an intervention ranks lower on these lists doesn't mean that they're a complete waste of time. Peer support groups have helped lots of people regain normal, healthy lives. It's just that some approaches are so effective that we should spend a little bit more time trying to find and exploit them. If we can find and use this small handful of interventions first, we do as much good as using the rest of them combined. Because the differences are so vast, choosing the right tool can matter as much as the time we put into using it. If we're trying to cut something in the kitchen, we obviously choose a knife. If we choose a random object from the house, even one from the kitchen, we're just not likely to get the best tool for the job. Even amongst the things designed for cutting, some are just much better at the job than others. If you choose the wrong tool, you'll have to use a lot more time and effort to get the job done. If you pick your knife, especially one of your best knives, you can get the job done in seconds. When it comes to having an impact, the data show it is not like picking amongst a set of sharp knives, where everything's equally effective. It's more like picking among random tools from your kitchen, where many things won't cut it and only some do a really good job. But why is this? How can programs differ so much in their effectiveness? Why do we sometimes choose the less effective approaches? There are lots of reasons, which we'll look at throughout the course. One major problem is that the feedback we get isn't very good, so it's harder to learn from experience. When we buy something for us, like a phone or we go on a holiday, we can immediately tell if we're getting what we were expecting. If it's bad, we won't do that again. But if we try to help others, it's harder to know if it's really working. If we say donate money to a charity, the value goes to someone else, almost always someone who we'll never meet. Most of the time, the feedback we get looks more like marketing. We hear success stories of the program working, or we get glossy magazines with images of smiling kids. Really good charities monitor how well their programs actually work, but most of us don't actually read these reports or compare them to all the other options. As a result, if a program isn't working, if kids don't actually need more school uniforms, the program can keep going for a long time because we might never really find out. We might keep sending uniforms to Kenya because it makes sense, without getting any good feedback about whether the children we're aiming to help actually need new uniforms. One solution here is to find the people who do have the time to compare all the reports. The data represented here come from the World Bank, from academics, from think tanks, and charity evaluators like GiveWell. These people have the time and the incentive to look closely at what works best. If we want a quick answer for what we could do, we could just trust their judgment. But we're doing this course so that we can learn to think better for ourselves. The point of this video is just to show how important it is to do that thinking. It's easy to think that most ways of changing the world are about equal. The truth is that some approaches are much more effective than others. As we saw, just 1 year working on these is like a whole lifetime doing something else. No matter what we care about or how we're trying to help, we can learn to do the stuff that sits at the top of these graphs, or at least learn how to move further to the right. The rest of this course will teach us how.